Now, in the coming days, you'll hear Democrats shriek about him and how no one is above the law. But the only reason this bogus case is in the DA's desk to begin with is because it's about Donald Trump. Donald Trump did nothing wrong, and he didn't commit a crime. And here to explain all of this and much more, lawyer for Donald Trump, Joe Tacopina. Joe, thank you so much for being with us on the show.
Thanks for having me, Kimberly.
Fantastic. So, people are really freaking out because you wouldn't think that this in the United States of America, that we would have this kind of miscarriage of justice, this level of politicization of the justice system. Can you talk about the law at issue here and just how weak of a foundation there is for this, sham indictment?
Sure, but I think we should start out with a fundamental question, Kimberly, that has only one answer, no matter what side of the political spectrum you sit on. Does anyone actually believe that if someone else were accused of paying hush money to avoid a sex scandal in public, in the manner that President Trump is suspected of doing, he would be prosecuted? Of course, of course not. And when you then go to this particular prosecutor, no one is above rule of law. That's correct. And we'll get to the facts here in a second, because not only was there not a crime, there was nothing done wrong. If there was a crime, it was committed against Donald Trump, the crime of extortion. Let's put that aside for a second. But no one is above rule of law in America. But prosecutors use their discretion every single day not to bring charges in any number of cases and for any number of reasons. And this prosecutor in particular, Mr. Bragg, the first day in office, he put out a memo to his office vowing not to charge numerous nonviolent crimes in this city, against public order. He's let violent criminals go out on bail. He's done it. He's let people who beat up police officers go out on bail and get a slap on the wrist. But yet something like this, which is clearly politically charged, is getting the full weight of Alvin Bragg's attention and office. It's despicable. And, you're seeing people come out, not just from the far right supporting the Donald Trump position and really going against Bragg, but people all the way on the far left as well. Wall Street Journal has come out with a massive piece, against this political prosecution, as they call it. You see people who would never support Donald Trump politically coming out and saying, this is wrong. You cannot overstate the mistake that Alvin Bragg is making here. Then when you think about what the allegations are, it's not even close to being a crime. Bradley Smith, who was the chairman of the Federal Election Committee, and one of the guys I referenced when you talk about all these individuals, he alone, other former chairmen have said, there's no crime here. There's no federal campaign law violation here. FEC said it. The Southern District of New York said it. Yet the Manhattan DA's office, who has no jurisdiction over federal elections, is somehow going to make a crime here. Why? Because Alvin Bragg is a Soros-funded prosecutor. He's got to answer to the people who fund him and support him and are making demands of him. I mean, Cy Vance looked at this, the former prosecutor of Manhattan, and he's the one who initiated the Trump grand jury, and he said there's nothing here. Then Alvin Bragg initially came in, and he said there's nothing here. Then Mark Pomerantz, left in a huff, committed all sorts of legal and ethical violations, wrote a book, and put pressure on Alvin Bragg, and all of a sudden, we've revived the case called the zombie case from the dead. And it's outrageous. It's exactly what our system of justice is not supposed to be. This is weaponization of the justice system and weaponization of our prosecutor's office in the first degree. And it is something that will harm the confidence in rule of law in this country forever.
It's really true. And it just seems they're just very interested in, pushing forward again, the agenda, the Soros-backed prosecutors, and making a whole spectacle of the 45th president of the United States. We saw all the reports across this weekend, the president himself coming out and saying that he expected to be arrested on Tuesday. Then that was walked back a little bit, saying, don't know exactly the day, but obviously you represent him, you're in contact with them. I'm sure you've tried to reason with them that this is, just outrageous. But, what is the latest on this?
Look, they're locked in their position. Susan Nicholas has been terrifically involved as far as handling the communication with them, and they've not given us any hope that they're going to see reason here. I know from inside that Manhattan District Attorney's office, a lot of people are very upset. I know that. Apparently, an internal memo was put out by Bragg saying we won't be intimidated. Well, you shouldn't be intimidated, but you should be concerned about the overwhelming concern amongst your employees, your prosecutors, that this office is being used as a political pawn. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office, aside from the Southern District of New York, was considered the prosecutor's office in the country. Robert Morgenthau would be rolling over in his grave right now.
He really would.
He really would be. And I say this, and I really appeal to not just people on the far right, but all decent people, whether politically opposed to Donald Trump or supportive of his candidacy, should be really concerned about weaponizing of a prosecutor's office for the political purpose of preventing a potential candidate from running for office or winning office. And, is it a coincidence that Donald Trump is leading all these polls right now, that they're really ratcheting up
it's backfiring.
It's backfiring. And I've said this, and I mean it. And then I saw Elon Musk said it. I've said this since day one in these interviews I've been doing, which is I believe this will catapult him into the White House. Because he's going to be vindicated here. He will be. Whether it's in phase 1, 2, or 3, he'll be vindicated because the facts of the law just don't match. There's 2 key elements here on the facts that you need to understand, Kimberly.
Yeah, walk us through that.
So there's 2 things that are crucial distinctions. This money, it's not a campaign law violation because it wasn't paid with campaign funds. This is not John Edwards. John Edwards had a donor pay with campaign funds for the securing of a home for his mistress and the mother of his unborn child, while his other wife, while his wife was dying of cancer. That was done by a donor, a third-party donor. That's campaign fund violation. The Justice Department didn't get a conviction there, and they ultimately dismissed the case. Why? Because they felt it wasn't exclusively done for the campaign, and that's the second element here. So you have personal funds being used, not campaign funds. And when you're talking about personal funds use regarding any candidacy or any candidate, there's a very bright line test that ends this inquiry right off the bat. And it's simply this: was the payment or expenditure made by the candidate with his personal funds, would that have been made irrespective of the campaign? And the answer to that question is clearly yes. Even Michael Cohen, the convicted felon, the admitted liar and perjurer, the guy who used to go on TV and say Donald Trump was the greatest person to ever walk the face of this earth. Now Donald Trump's the worst person to ever walk the face of the earth. I mean, that guy has about as much credibility as an ant. And he's out there with that face of his going down out talking like he's part of the democratic order in this country and really is all about democracy. He's out there saying things that are unbelievable. What he did say, though, when he pled guilty to his felony was that Donald Trump, one of the reasons Donald Trump did this was to protect himself and his family and his young children, Barron included, from personal embarrassment. That ends it. That shows you that this payment, this nuisance settlement payment, that's all it was. And for that reason, Bradley Smith and other FEC officials who lived this stuff have said there is no violation here, no campaign law violation. So I honestly cannot believe we're here. I really can't, Kimberly. I really thought they were just doing sort of their investigation, and ultimately they were going to, call it what it was. But it's not going to be that way. Apparently, they look like they're gearing up to bring charges, which they will be very sorry for. They're going to be embarrassed.
They won't win the case. They won't prevail. They've got a flimsy, political indictment.
They lose on the law and they lose on the facts. And, I think what they're booking on is a New York jury saying, we hate Donald Trump. And they're booking on the fact that a New York jury will never acquit Donald Trump. Well, the fact of the matter is, I have a lot more confidence in New York juries than Alvin Bragg does. I know them a lot more.
Especially in an outrageous situation like this, because if they can do it to him, they can do it to everybody else. And as you pointed out, you pointed out the Southern District, declined to pursue this, did not prosecute it. So what are the magic facts, Joe, that all of a sudden Alvin Bragg thinks that he has? What is the change in circumstance or facts? There isn't any. That's what's so pathetic. This is hitting the same and beating the same dead horse.
Yeah, this was a federal election, not a state election, right? So is he going to use state election campaign law violations when it doesn't apply here? I really don't know where. No, we're all baffled. I'm telling you, even the scholars that do this campaign finance law are baffled.
Right.
It's going to be a mystery to see where he goes with this, but it's not going to be legally sufficient. It won't be factually sufficient. And it's going to wind up being egg in their face. And it's going to embolden those supporters of Donald Trump who's saying he's being persecuted by his political opponents through the justice system. Look,
Well,
that's what
it's
we have.
true.
This
Yeah.
new committee, right? We have this House Judiciary Committee, and we have this oversight committee overseeing weaponization of the Justice Department. That's been, a formed committee by Jim Jordan, and he's running it. And as we sit here today, Kimberly, as luck would have it, they just sent a letter to Alvin Bragg demanding his testimony for what they call a clearly political prosecution.
Well,
So,
that's a big deal. That's a big
it's a big
development
deal.
and very important, because it's so outrageous that they're going to ask him to come to testify about what exactly that he is trying to do to this president without any factual basis whatsoever. I mean, this man should not be a district attorney. He should lose his license to practice law. He should be disbarred for this kind of egregious behavior. It is so unethical and so improper. It's just a complete, selective and, malicious prosecution against, a former president without any factual basis.
Dan, it's an about face. Mark Pomerantz in his book, and really, he must have really lost his mind when he wrote that book, because he put himself in legal jeopardy in standing with the bar and the grievance committee. He's committed ethical violations, and he made some admissions in that book were pearls for Donald Trump. But one thing he said in there, and I have the quote right in front of me, is during a meeting with Alvin Bragg said to him and his staff, he could not see a world in which we could indict Donald Trump and call Michael Cohen as the prosecution witness. So that being said, I guess something happened in the last couple of months between Alvin Bragg's previous statements and his current state of mind. What could it be? Could it be political pressure? Could it be the people who funded his campaign?
Exactly.
Now, and if that's the case, that is something that should send shivers down the spine of every American, whether you're on the far right, far left, in the middle, woke, asleep, whatever. That should scare the living hell out of anybody. And that's what's happening here.
It's really true. When you think about it, their star witnesses, a convicted felon, you know what that means in a court of law. Like, they can disregard his total testimony. This is a man, with a felony, conviction. He's a confirmed liar. And so you're supposed to take the word of this man for circumstances that they've refused to even prosecute or go further on the case. But now they're going to resurrect it and bootstrap it to this guy who's now convicted.
But Kimberly, that's a great point, and it's true. I'd be paid to cross-examine Michael Cohen, and hopefully I'll have the chance to do it. I don't think it's going to happen in this form, because I don't think this case is going to survive. But even if he's saying, yes, he paid her that money, first of all, he took out the loan, Michael Cohen. That's normal. Most lawyers take out loans to pay off settlements for clients, but that was because he was trying to ingratiate himself to the president. But he paid her that money to shut up this scandal that the president vehemently denies. And Stormy Daniels, by the way, has said never happened in multiple writings.
Well, and the president prevailed and got a judgment against Stormy Daniels. Let's not also forget that.
But so let's assume everything Michael Cohen's saying is true. Just assume, which is a stretch, because he really doesn't say anything that's truthful completely. But assuming everything he's saying is true, there's still no crime. Right. We understand that. People don't seem to understand that. Michael Cohen is almost an irrelevant witness here. What is he going to say? That I paid her off to avoid. So what? His plea allocution says it all. He said he paid the money off for the president to help the campaign, and so the president could avoid personal embarrassment and embarrassment to his family. That is the end of the equation. It is not a campaign law violation. It wasn't paid with campaign funds, paid personal funds to avoid a personal situation from becoming an embarrassing personal situation. End of story. So Michael Cohen can say anything he wants. The facts are the facts. Even if you credit everything he says, it's still not a crime.
Yeah, that's the thing. So now where do we go from here? Because a lot of people, they're talking about this. It's very big, obviously, in the news and online and social media. Here it is, Monday, we're expecting, okay, there's supposed to be a whole public statement, something we're saying they're going to arrest the president. Where does it stand?
We'll have to check with the media for that. I mean, Michael Cohen hasn't given his daily press conference yet, so we don't really know what's happening. Normally I think he's been deputized as a press secretary for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, because he comes out and tells us who's going in the grand jury, what's happening in the grand jury, when it's coming. So we haven't had his press conference yet today. And
he's like Baghdad Bob or something. Yeah, remember that back in the day.
At least the press haven't occurred yet. Normally I get my information from the journalists calling me and telling me what's happening. So,
From the leaks, yeah.
We're
But
holding that.
theoretically speaking, though, if there's an indictment, if there's an arrest warrant, would you ask to have it done, virtually? And what do you expect? What does that process look like?
They do what they want. At that point, this is an all-out war, an all-out war. Donald Trump is the toughest human being I've ever met. Most people crumble under allegations like this, and with the pressure he's under from political opponents weaponizing the justice system. Donald Trump is not going to ask for anything from them. They want him in 100 Center Street. He'll be there loud and proud, and there's nobody that's going to make him cower. But again, let's see where they go. Let's see what the process is. This is all new to everybody in the history of this country.
Well, that's the thing, because people wonder, okay, then does he post bail? Does he, the whole thing is so disgusting.
Bail. You could murder someone in New York City and you don't have to post bail.
Right. Okay? This is what I'm wondering.
If they ask for $1 in bail in this case, that just seals the deal. I mean, there was a guy who, in the pro-Israel Day rally, a bunch of Middle Eastern gentlemen pummeled for no reason this one Israeli guy because he was just marching in support of his beliefs in his country. Pummeled him into a coma. They were released on bail, and I think their deal was a 6-month plea. It's scary to me what's happening in the city, and yet this is what that office is spending its resources on.
Well, that's the sad part. When you see just the rampant crime and the violence in New York, nobody wants to live there. Sorry, Joe, including me. We all left because it was so crazy, and you can't even walk down the streets. It's not safe. The subways aren't safe. This guy has no idea what he's doing. He just wants to prosecute and persecute Donald Trump. This has got to, backfire on him spectacularly. And then there's people that tell me that he has higher aspirations for a bigger office. Alvin Bragg, if you could imagine.
And that's, and that says it all, right? That really says it all, because it's almost clear what he's doing. There's no factual basis to bring this case, no legal basis. No other officers looked at this case. Everyone said, this is, of all cases, this is the one. But he has to bring something. He has to bring something because the people who are directing him and supporting him and funding him, and he has higher aspirations, well, that's his audience. That's who he speaks to. And if they want this to happen, he's going to make it happen. That's not the way it should be. Prosecutors are supposed to be above reproach, above influence. They're supposed to make prosecutors. They have enormous power, prosecutors. And before you bring charges against someone, you should.
We're both former prosecutors, so we know how this works.
Prosecutors. Not a proud day to be a prosecutor, though. I will tell you that.
I'll tell you that much. So I'm just real quick procedurally, Joe. This gets filed. There's the indictment. They bring a case, etc. Then right away you're going to file, a motion to try to get this thrown out, or what right now is your legal strategy?
Well, right now we're in a holding pattern because we have no idea what they could conceivably charge him with. But no matter what it's going to be, if it has to do with this slush fund payments or nuisance settlement, let's call it really what it is, a nuisance settlement, obviously we'll move immediately to get this dismissed. But that's going to take a judge with honesty and integrity and courage. But I'm still confident in this system. And I believe at bottom, this New York jury that the DA's office is banking on hating Donald Trump, I think they're going to hate this process, the political motivated prosecution and the weaponization of a prosecutor's office much more than they like or dislike any particular political candidate.
It's so true. Well, I'm sure glad that he has you on his side. And I know that you and your team will do a phenomenal job representing the president. And, all eyes, not just in this country, around the world, are on this case and are just in shock about what has transpired here. But, in the end, I really do believe you guys will prevail. As usual, everybody's been writing in and praying for the president and just outraged. But as you've said, he's even getting mainstream media support, people saying this is pretty insane what's going on here.
Right. And I think that speaks volumes, right? Because nothing Donald Trump does will appease some certain people on certain sides of the political spectrum. This is different. Because they understand the long-term damage it's going to do to this country. And is this where we're at now, really, Kimberly? Is this where we're at now, where prosecutors pursue people based on political views? And it's not America. This is not America. And this is some scary, scary stuff.
It really is. Well, I'm glad we have you on our side and fighting for him. So, Joe, good luck with everything. Thank you so much for being on the program, and we will continue to follow the story closely. Be well.
Thank you.